Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Humza Yousaf is full of blather, isn't he? He went off to Brussels, all hopeful that the officials there would talk to him, would help him in his quest for an independent Scotland to join the EU, and he was utterly rebuffed. You see, they won't talk to him. Oh, they'll be friends and they'll put a reassuring arm round his shoulder when he seems obviously upset. But they're not going to enter into any kind of diplomatic talks because they only deal with sovereign nations. And what's worse is that he has been rather humiliated by this, is that they don't even see Scotland as a nation, never mind as a sovereign nation. Whilst Scotland is a country within the United Kingdom, the EU views the United Kingdom as a country, and it treats Scotland as merely a region within that country. And therefore it will not enter into any kind of diplomatic relations. And it's really rather a retrograde step for a man who claims that he will be able to lead his country into independence and into the EU. The EU don't even see it as a country. Oh dear, Humza. Anyway, we'll have a look at this article just to show how he came back with his tail between his legs. It's just a sad day, isn't it? It's a sad day if you're Humza Yousaf. Here goes. So, Humza humiliated. EU officials rebuff Yousaf's Envoy hopes as he faces being babysat by UK diplomats. Yeah, basically what it is from now on, anyone from the Scottish government who goes to the EU to sit in on, or not just the EU, but the EU in particular, but has to have a UK diplomat in the room at all time to ensure that the Scots envoy does not bring the conversation around to talks of succession or of independence. That would be quite against the rules, effectively, because it could lead to effectively treason, sedition, if you start discussing the leaving or the breakup of the UK without it being through official lines. You're discussing internal matters with foreigners, and that is actually illegal. Anyway, Brussels bureaucrats would reject an envoy from the SNP government as they view Scotland as a region of the United Kingdom rather than a country in its own right. And this is where the UK is stronger, because within the UK, Scotland is seen as a country, but not by the EU, not by these unelected people who Scotland is so desperately, or the SNP anyway, is so desperately hoping will become its overlords. It's way worse than you ever imagined. Anyway, Humza Yousaf has been dealt a humiliating blow after it emerged EU officials will rebuff his attempts at sending an envoy to Brussels to, in his words, prepare the ground for an independent Scotland to join the bloc. It won't happen. The SNP leader has boasted at his party's convention on Saturday, when about 14 people and a dog turned up, the huge swathes of empty seats, about winning over Brussels bureaucrats to his Skexit cause. Well, he can't win them over because he's not allowed to talk to them. How on earth can he win them over? He travelled to Belgium on Monday for his first trip overseas since becoming the First Minister, and as he pretends to be a national leader bestriding the world stage in the same way as Biden or Angela Merkel used to do. But he's not either of those, is he? He is due to meet European Commission Vice President Mario Sefcovic, but he will be babysat by Lindsay Crosdale-Appleby. Oh, should be Sir Humphrey, shouldn't it? Anyway, the UK's most senior diplomat in Brussels. It comes after the UK government announced it would insist on representatives sitting in on any meetings between the Scottish government ministers and foreign diplomats to ensure the conversation does not turn into a pitch for other nations to support Scotland's succession from the UK. And in a further blow, it has emerged that the European Commission, would reject any attempts by Mr. Yousaf to send an envoy to the city. In other words, the EU are saying, yes, that's all very fine and pleasant, Mr. Yousaf. Thank you very much for showing an interest. However, we cannot talk to you because you're not, first of all, you're not a sovereign country. You have no diplomatic standing. We cannot get involved in the internal politics of a country that is not a member of the EU. And you run the risk of sedition within your own country if we talk to you. The guy has not got a clue, has he? And it is very, very embarrassing for him because he's got all this in his head and he's telling his own people, I'm going to Brussels and I'm going to do this. And Brussels go, no, you're not. No, we're not talking to you. A source quoted in the Times said, the EU as such deals only with the official governments of third countries. Of course, we welcome the friendship of our Scottish friends and stand ready to engage with all parts of the UK within this new cycle of our relationship. But note the emphasis was on UK, not Scotland. We'll welcome you as friends. Yes, absolutely. It's very nice. Have a cup of tea. Would you like a sandwich? How's the wife? But we're not going to go, oh, let's talk about you destroying your country, pulling out, going independent and joining us. That's not going to happen. The EU deems Scotland to be a region of the UK rather than a third country in its own right. While civil servants may be able to pitch a case to individuals, party appointees must stick to issues within their control. And of course, dealing with international matters is not under the reign or the aegis of Scotland. That can only come from the diplomatic service, the Home and Foreign Offices, the Home Office and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. This is no purview of the Scottish Government to deal with international matters. He, of course, knows this full well, and so it's rather surprising that he would stand in front of his hall and tell the half a dozen people there that this was the sort of thing he was going to do. It's odd, isn't it? Anyway, it comes after the SNP had its wings clipped in relation to foreign jollies by Foreign Secretary James Cleverly. It followed talks with Alistair Jack amid concerns Scottish ministers were stepping out with their devolved brief on their taxpayer-funded trips. Yeah, they're sending these guys over to Brussels on jollies, basically. Eating, meeting, drinking, there's probably ladies in clubs, that sort of thing. All paid for by the Scottish taxpayer. And yet it can achieve nothing because no one in Brussels is going to talk to them because they don't have legitimacy. They don't have the competency to make any proposals because they're not an independent country. They're a region, as the EU calls them. Mr. Cleverly insisted on a UK minder to sit in on meetings to ensure they were not used to effectively promote the SNP policy of separation. I would suggest we need the equivalent of a Logan Act, which is where no one can talk to any foreign government, diplomat or official unless they are part of an official meeting by the government. So the likes of Humza Yousaf could not go and speak to foreign dignitaries. Only officials, bureaucrats, diplomats or government ministers from the UK government could do it. And until such time as Scotland gets, if it ever gets, it becomes an independent nation, then it can do what it's like, its own rules. But otherwise, you run the risk of someone like Humza Yousaf going there, not being fully briefed by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, starts talking about things that people don't want talked about, putting back the cause of diplomacy 20 years, possibly starting trade wars or even actual wars by saying one thing here or one thing there, the wrong thing, which can be taken out of context. This is why diplomacy is so very hard and why it is well above the pay grade of an idiot like Humza Yousaf. Anyway, speaking on Saturday, Mr. Yousaf had said he would create the Envoy position if the SNP won the next election in Scotland as part of his de facto referendum plan. You can't just call yourself a country by, oh, I've got an envoy now. That's not how it works. They have to be officially recognised as diplomats, and they won't be. Nobody will recognise them. He told attendees, if we win the general election, and he's not saying what a win is, we will prepare the ground for Scotland to become an independent member state of the EU by establishing an envoy position, a representative of the Scottish Government in Brussels. More expense by the on top of the Scottish taxpayers' already high tax rates and rising, for a position that shouldn't even exist and which runs the risk of ending up in a court case and someone going to jail for a long time for sedition. The position will be focused on explaining the Scottish Government policy on independence to our fellow Europeans. They're not interested. You're not a country yet. They can't talk to you. He says, we will reinforce our European partners, our commitment to a legal, constitutional, democratic process. You can do all that once you gain independence, but until then, you cannot. He says, we'll also seek to enhance understanding that Scotland is an ancient nation, which it is, committed to its founding values of the EU. What? The removal of democracy, the only people that can actually create laws being an unelected cabal who cannot be voted out of office, and that the Parliament in the EU does not exist to bring forth laws, but only to vote on those that are presented to it. Yeah, great. So you think Scotland would be better represented in an unelected dictatorship rather than being a senior partner in a friendly group of nations which have a long and shared history? Good luck with that. Anyway, I'm rounding off and coming up. Humza Yousaf must really believe the things he says. I think in his mind, he thinks that if he says something enough times, it becomes true. Or if he really, really believes it and he really, really hopes, then people will accept that what he says is true. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. How it works is, you're not an independent country. You have no diplomatic standing. People under international law cannot just talk to you, and they certainly will not talk to you about the breakup of a third country at a level where you're not the official government of that country. That is quite wrong. That is definitely the purview of diplomats, not strange little men from a town hall in Arbroath. It is very weird that he's even thinking, oh, we can create this envoy role, probably on £100,000 a year. You've got a massive black hole, financial black hole coming up, and you think, oh, I know, we'll create. Well, it's £100,000 a year for the man. You've got to pay for an office, and Brussels isn't cheap. You've got to pay for all the ancillary stuff. It's probably going to end up costing you £500,000 a year. On top of everything else, nobody will speak to you because you have delusions of grandeur. The man is utterly deluded. But I'm glad to see that the EU brought him back down to earth and sort of handed him his backside and told him to stop playing at grown-ups and go and, carry on colouring books. Stay within the lines, Humza. It's nice to see when the grown-ups in the room look at him and go, bless. One day. Isn't it funny? Anyway, I shall finish there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and we'll just keep watching these clowns because they are so dumb. Bye.